What's up, bankers?
Hello, bankers.
How's everybody doing? We are here with the one and only David Coulthard. How are you?
I'm good. How did you know that my nickname was Wanker? Did you say Wanker?
We did.
Yes. How did
That's
you know?
your nickname?
Yeah, it's my nickname.
We start every show with that. We didn't realize that we were giving you a nice little shout out. Who gave you that nickname?
Anyone who's ever met me. No, it's not really my nickname.
Yeah,
DC
well, you're
is
in
my
the
nickname.
perfect place. You're at on the Red Flags podcast for the second time, returning guests. We're thrilled to have you on. It's going to be a little bit of a different situation this time. We are going to be doing this thing that we're starting to do with former F1 drivers, where we try to March Madness style figure out who your greatest of all time is. So we've set up a little board here. We've ranked them to the best of our abilities. There's going to be some mess ups, so give us some grace there. But we've got some drivers that you've picked because we have, some people in there. The numbers didn't work out, but so we've got 4 of your guys. We've got a bunch of WDC champions. Got a bunch of greats here. So
You're not in there, but if it was the best jawlines in history, I think you and Weber would actually be in the finals.
Yeah.
you ever duking it out and just blow for blow
in the finals. But but
we're gonna start. Why don't we start at the corner nearest to you? We're gonna go matchup by matchup, and we're gonna start with a guy that you've got a little bit of history with.
Well, you're talking top left.
Top left.
Schumacher.
That's right.
And Raikkonen.
And Jones.
And Jones. Alan Jones.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alan, he was sort of old school, wasn't he? He was kind of like...
He got two for Williams.
Yeah.
Like he got their 2 first championships.
Yeah, and I actually think Juan Pablo Montoya kind of popped out of the Alan Jones school of, I don't give a shit, I drive race cars.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I'm not driving race cars, I eat burgers, drink beer. Actually, I don't think Juan drinks, but anyway, you know what I mean? He just...
Yeah.
So what am I doing here? I'm picking between Schumacher and Jones.
Yeah.
So that's kind of easy, isn't it? You got to go with Schumacher
Yeah.
07, haven't you?
Yes, you got to go with Schumacher there.
Yeah.
We're gonna go into these guys more as it goes on, but we'll move right on to the next ranking here. We've got Raikkonen versus Jenson Button.
2 very different personalities.
Yes.
One who speaks and the other one who doesn't. Kimi and I were teammates for a couple of years, and he was either asleep in the back of the truck or driving very quickly. So I would say Raikkonen was the more natural talent. I would say Jenson was the more professional talent. So I guess that's a bit like, Jenson would fall into an Alain Prost kind of category in my mind.
Right.
And Kimi would fall into a sort of Mika, not just because of the finish, but naturally just very talented. And they did just enough to tap into that. Right. Whereas Schumacher had the talent but worked like a dog.
Yeah.
So if what is this? This is about speed.
What do you value? I think that what's interesting about this for us when talking to drivers is that it's kind of a Rorschach test for what they kind of value. So that's game time decision for you.
So I'm going to go with Jenson, but I don't want that to be misunderstood in that I don't really admire the speed that Kimi had, the I don't kind of give a shit attitude, and getting that one title was more than deserving, I think.
Right.
Potentially could have done more. So, but I just think that JB is the more professional. I think he sort of sweated his asset
in
a
your
lot more.
book. In both your books, you always talk about the value of hard work.
Yeah.
I brought this up before with you. In his book, he always talks about how you got to work hard. You got eyes on the prize, and that's how you got where you ended up is hard work, and then you just land on Kimi Raikkonen, and you're like, that guy didn't do any of the shit that I'm talking about, and somehow he ended up
just a great talent, just a super fast natural talent. Respect to that. And his son is coming up through the ranks and karting, so I would not be surprised to see Kimi back reluctantly in the paddock, but because probably his son will be in Formula One.
Have you seen him since he's retired? Has he been in the paddock?
Okay. I saw him in Monza this year. He turned up with a family, and he's moved to Italy. He's basically living there, so his son is at the track all the time and doing what you really need to do if you're trying to sort of guiding. To really guide them through, you need to be on track all the time, which is financially not viable for the majority of people.
Right.
But
Kimi
Formula
Räikkönen
One's
can
never
figure
been,
it out.
Yeah, he can figure it out.
That's right. Okay,
thanks, Ferrari.
Thank you, Ferrari. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next battle here. We've got Niki Lauda versus Jochen Rindt.
Okay, I'm going to go with Niki because Jochen, although I know the family and I know of him through Jackie Stewart, who I worked with as a young driver, I never met the man. I know he's very highly regarded, but Niki I did meet, spent time with, a huge amount of respect for just what he overcame and his approach and how grounded he was, considering how famous he was. Because a lot of time, famous people become a bit detached and a bit unapproachable. And when I first arrived in Formula One, I remember Niki coming up to me and sticking his hand out and saying, "Welcome to Formula One." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is Niki Lauda." Just because I was a Grand Prix driver, but I spent the majority of my time as a fan, so I hadn't kind of grown into being a driver. So there's a massive amount of respect for the way he lived his life.
I felt like the hat kind of represented. Yeah. That was what was so, I think, special about the hat was like, I'm still the same guy.
Yeah, man, you guys got that vibe as well. You're very grounded. You both wear hats. So thank you for
We're just like Niki Lauda. Yeah. Okay, so round one of the left side here done. I'm going to...
Just Schumacher moves. Button moves. Lauda moves.
Okay, let's go to the bottom here. We've got your old teammate, Mika Häkkinen versus Nigel Mansell.
Very quick to that one. Mansell, grew up watching him. Unbelievable doggedness and fighting spirit. I was his test driver. Then we shared the car in '94 after Ayrton passed away. With all of that respect for sort of pure speed, I've got to go with Mika. But that's a really tough one in terms of two great champions, and the fact that Nigel did it at 40. I think it was Peter Collins, who was at Lotus back in the day. When Nigel left there, Peter Collins said that he'd never win a race as long as he had a hole in his arse. And and how wrong he was, because Nigel went on to win a lot of races. Not everyone's cup of tea. Very sort of single-minded and one approach to how he went about things. But
was he tough to work with?
Yeah, he was, because when he decided that's the way, that became a fact. There's opinions in life, and we can all have one. Yeah. And we can all have three different opinions, and it's fine. And then there's facts, isn't there? So if we're arguing over facts, then two of us are wrong. Yeah. If we're arguing over an opinion, that's fine. That's just that's the fun of this, isn't it?
Right. But he viewed his opinions as facts.
Yeah.
And this is going to factor in later. How much do you value like a guy going and winning other things? Because Mansell left.
Unbelievable. He went to America and won IndyCar, almost won the 500.
Yeah.
The guy is a he's an unripped Superman. Yeah. If he was putting on a super cape, it would be a bit lumpy. Yeah. So
he's Superman with a dad bod.
Yeah, exactly. But natural talent and doggedness, and he drove for Ferrari, for God's sake, as well, and walked away from them. He just had absolute belief. So it does make it difficult to call between the two.
Right.
But I've got to acknowledge they were teammates, and Mansell only managed a couple of races alongside Häkkinen, maybe at the wrong point in his career, and the car didn't fit and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But Mika's a guy that outqualified Ayrton in his first ever race.
And not to linger on this, but because I think it's relevant on Mansell, but because I think it's relevant to what we are currently experiencing, is like, they say when you get the number 2 label, it's like forever.
Yeah.
And Mansell got hit with the number 2. Yeah. But he was able to escape that. The number 2 label.
Yeah, Frank Williams believed in him. Colin Chapman believed in him. Oh. I'm sure there was other notable people to go. I think Enzo was still alive when he signed to Ferrari. So Enzo Ferrari believed in him. So Mansell, it's so unfair to have them both in the same category. But hopefully I've explained my reasoning. The sort of natural speed of Mika.
You have very well. Okay, let's move on to the next. We got Nico Rosberg versus Mario Andretti.
Andretti.
Next, Ayrton Senna versus Emerson Fittipaldi.
Senna.
All right.
Okay, so this is done.
But Fittipaldi, unbelievable driver as well. What he achieved in Formula One, what he achieved in America. Very nice human being. So full respect to Emerson for his achievements.
And quite the lineage.
He's been given a bum deal going up alongside Senna.
And quite the lineage. I mean, there's a whole racing.
And the other thing about the other thing about Fittipaldi, and you could say that about Prost as well, and a lot of these great drivers, is that they knew when to move. They knew which, because Fittipaldi, he was with Ronnie Peterson. He was like, I don't know about this, and let me go to McLaren at just the right time. So I think it's almost like an actor, like picking your project. There's picking. Anyway, that was something I noticed in picking these.
Man, this is a great board because there's some unbelievable athletes, and business people and human beings on this list. Because that, when it comes down to my opinion or your opinion on this, it's going to be a little bit the interaction we've had with those individuals or what we've seen them do. And not all of these drivers I've obviously met. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Sure. All right, let's go to the top here. We've got Lewis Hamilton versus Jody Scheckter.
Well, you got to say Hamilton, of course, because of his championships. But Jody, again, out of that kind of Alan Jones, Nigel Mansell, this is the way I do it. You would not want to arm wrestle them. Yeah. They were just, they were like laborers. They're the sort of guys that would be, on the front line.
Yeah.
Right, of course. Okay, then we got, this is two, heavyweights here of the modern and the old school. We got Fernando Alonso and Alberto Ascari.
Well, I never met Ascari, but God, what a name! A name that will forever be celebrated because of Monza and the Ascari chicane. And I've got to go with Fernando because he's 44 years old. He seems forever young. He's still pumping it out. And he kind of flies under the radar in many ways. Yeah. Doesn't get involved in. He is controversial in every team he's ever left. His going away present is pulling the pin in a hand grenade and throwing it in. But it's because of an absolute belief. And I think, not to be disrespectful to the the vertically challenged, but I think there's an element of
Napoleonic,
which just sees him not take no for an answer, not lie down. So I've got massive respect for what he's achieved and his longevity.
How long do you think he's going to stay in F1?
I think that'll be dictated by next year's car. I think if next year's car, an Adrian Newey Honda-powered car, which if Honda do a good job, because I think it will be dominated by engines initially, but if Honda deliver and Adrian, of course, it takes time to sort of influence change, but he's joined with Aston with a new facility, and they've had a time to invest before he joined. Then we could be here next year going, who would have known? Lance Stroll has won 10 races and he's leading the World Championship.
L'chaim. Okay, let's go down to our next battle here. We've got Alain Prost versus James Hunt.
For professionalism, and Prost was kind of my favourite driver when I was a young guy growing up. I always really admired how smooth he was. When I was young in karting, I didn't fully appreciate the advantage he had for being 45 kilograms wet through. He and the weight of the driver combined with the car, I think only came in like 90 or 91, something like that. Right. So he had a massive, like when he was up against Mansell at Ferrari, was that 90? He had a big advantage with being small, and he would negotiate with the team because 10 kilograms is 0.3 of a second, pretty much on every track. It might be slightly less in Monaco, it might be a bit more in Spa, but let's call it 0.3. So if he was 20 kilos lighter than his teammate before the driver was included in the weight, without trying, he had half a second.
Wow.
So he would go to the teams and go, well, how much would you spend to gain half a second performance? And they would go, 2 million, 3 million. You go, well, I'll split the difference, pay me 1.5, and I'll come and join. In addition to what you offered me, because you don't need to develop the car, I'm pocket sized, and I'm going to be able to give you that performance. So
he goes, hold on, let me take a dump, and then my price goes up.
Actually, I don't know if anyone in the room could just Google what year the driver's weight was brought into play as an overall package, because that would help us understand. Everything he did before that was, I'm small and I have an advantage. Everything he did after that, like winning the last title in a Williams, was a genuine thing, because Damon Hill would have been 80 kilos, Alain would have been 60, and the 20 would have been ballasted on the car.
And Mansell called him Machiavellian at Ferrari, and then he hated it working with him so much that when he showed back up at Williams after winning the title, Mansell's like, I'm out again. I can't deal. I can't have this guy as a teammate again.
But there was a point going back to the late 80s, early 90s, when the driver just was not included in the dry weight of the car.
Right.
That nowadays the driver, that's why he weighs as soon as he gets out of the car, because then they scrutiny of the car and add the driver's weight, and they go, you've got to be above.
I kind of wish it was like that now, because Yuki Tsunoda would be like a 5-time world champion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He would have a massive advantage.
And I know that you struggled with that, and because you're a big guy. I know that like that was like a big struggle for you, kind of just like the we were talking with Yuki a couple of days ago, and he was like, you can kind of eat whatever he wants, because he's so small that he doesn't have to worry about that. Whereas like Max, who's like 6 feet tall, like he has to be eating carrots and celery and Yuki's,
he does. Well, Max relaxes into the winter, and then he loses weight in the new year to go racing again. He's below his natural kind of body weight. I'm a full 10 kilos heavier than when I was racing. There's an element of aging in that. But there's also, I was below what my weight should be for my size, and I needed to be competitive.
Okay, great. Done.
Easy peasy. It's kind of fun, but you do feel a bit guilty leaving out some great names. But I think so far there wouldn't be many people would disagree with the kind of where we're going. Someone that maybe was around, like I'm sure. Well, actually, I'm not
Nico
sure. I was
might
gonna
have
say,
some words for you.
Yeah, but he took me out of my last race in 2008. So
let's go. A little bit of small payback. Okay, we're going to the bottom here now. This is going to be the end of round one. We got Sebastian Vettel versus. We're going to let you pick the Villeneuve. Jacques or Gilles?
Well, Gilles is revered, isn't he, as just the absolutely on edge kind of. He's the sort of extreme racing driver. So if he wasn't a racing driver, he'd definitely do extreme sports, wouldn't he? He'd be like jumping off a bridge and working out how to put the parachute on the way down. He'd be that Travis Pastrana type guy out of an aircraft. So as much as I do understand that passion for Gilles, Jacques won the Indy 500, he won the IndyCar Championship, and he won the Formula One World Championship. Okay. And I think that in many ways, because of his personality, then he isn't as celebrated as he should be. And I say that as a friend of Jacques and someone that I've spent a lot of time with him. But because he was a bit indifferent, maybe because he didn't have that father figure in his life later in his life, he was the sort of classic guy where doing a contract, he wanted to do no appearances, no partner appearances, no media. And that's fine. It's not the best part of being a Grand Prix driver, but being a professional sports person is doing all of those things.
All right.
So you are obliged to do the FIA media events. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But going to do partner events and sponsor events, they're paying your salary. They're developing the team.
Right.
And I think that Jacques, if he was here or he's listening to this, would take it on the chin that he probably was a little bit, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm not. Because it kind of, it sets a tone for the rest of the team of, well, I'm not doing that because I don't enjoy it. A team does whatever's necessary to win.
Right.
And that means all hands on deck, and that's not my job. well, you know what? In a team, it's all our jobs to do whatever's necessary to get the job done. So
right.
So
now Vettel versus Jacques.
I'd go with Jacques, and because of his championship achievements, and as much as Jules is obviously a revered name in the sport, he was wild, and therefore it's probably not a big surprise that he's not on there as a multiple champion.
Right. Okay, but Villeneuve versus Vettel.
Oh, shit, sorry, I wasn't reading the board there. Okay. Look, you've got to go with Seb because what he achieved, 4 back-to-back world championships, professional, did his job. I've got a bigger respect for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and let's not forget the iconic clip of you calling for Vettel's championship.
No one believed it, but no one believed it. But felt it in my water. Yeah,
you were out on a limb. Yeah. Everyone laughed at you.
Yeah,
and look who's laughing now. Vettel moves on. Next, we've got Piquet versus Brabham.
That is actually quite a tough one because Jack Brabham built his own cars.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of Bruce McLaren-esque. It's another era. And Piquet, 3 world championships.
We've got 2 3-time world champions here.
Yeah.
I know, it's tough.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that why Brabham should edge this is because he was an owner-operator. And that must have been... It was just of that era. Where you could go, well, look, let's just fettle it together and see if it works.
But every great driver tried to start their own team and they all failed, except him.
Yeah. No, so we go with Brabham, but a huge amount of respect for what Piquet achieved. He probably stayed around a bit longer. His Lotus time was not a great time, but I love when he was at Benetton and when he won the race in Montreal, he in the press conference said, "I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Nelson Piquet," because it'd been so long since he'd won a race, and it was so long since he'd been in a top 3.
Yeah.
So he was kind of looked like he was paydaying towards the end of his career.
Right.
But I think that was at the race where Mansell the engine switched off coming out of the hairpin in Montreal, and then Piquet came through and won. So yeah, it's a tough one, but we'll go with Brabham.
Okay, great. And then the bottom of this list will be the end of round 1.
Verstappen.
Verstappen over Damon Hill doesn't even have to think.
But Damon is, again, one of the great underrated champions. He won 20-odd Grand Prix. Very short career. I think he did about 7 seasons.
Came in so late.
Came in late.
He was a 28-year-old rookie or something.
I know. No karting experience. Damon is... When he beat Schumacher in the wet in Suzuka, it was an outer body experience.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. So... And I watched his documentary recently and really enjoyed it because it shows just how much kind of trauma there was relating to his father's passing, and what the effect that had on the family, and the determination that he's had to achieve. You know, he deserves to be higher up. But look, you've got to recognize how great.
Tough draw.
Tough draw.
Okay, round 1 is done. We've got Schumacher, Button, Lauda, Stewart, who's one of your write-ins. Clark, another one of your write-ins, Hakkinen, Andretti, Senna, Alonso, Hamilton, Prost, Graham Hill, another one of your guys, Fangio, another one of your write-ins, Vettel, Brabham, and Verstappen. What's up, Vankas? As you know, we have teamed up with BetMGM this season. We will be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we have a special offer for our listeners each week. If you have not signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code DADDY, and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, you sign up using the bonus code DADDY. You deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game or race, whatever it is. You receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. If your bet loses, just make sure you use the bonus code DADDY when you sign up. The new season is fast around the corner, and baby, we already got some betting lines on the new year. Right now, to win in Australia, baby. To win in Australia, Max Verstappen is at the top of the ranks, plus 300, followed by George Russell, plus 300. Lando Norris, plus 350. Oscar Piastri, plus 650. And if you think that Charles Leclerc is going to steal this one, plus 2,000 on Charles Leclerc. And if you think Lewis Hamilton's going to come in 2026 with a bang, plus 3,300 on Lewis Hamilton. And not only that, you also have the entire Drivers' Championship. Right now, Max Verstappen is at the top of that with a plus 250. George Russell right behind him, plus 325. Lando Norris, plus 350. Oscar Piastri, plus 700. And if you think these Ferrari boys can do it, it's plus 2,200 for Charles Leclerc to win the championship, plus 3,300 for Lewis Hamilton to do it. There's so much coming up in 2026. No one knows what's going to happen, but if you think that you've got a hunch, sign up with BetMGM. Put your money where your mouth is. BetMGM. Make it legendary.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 for New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 for Massachusetts. 21 and over only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP for Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF for Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 for Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
We're going to start round 2 on the top left here. Schumacher over Button. I have to ask you this one question. I believe when I read Button's biography, he was talking about, it's like you talk about the hard work of Button, but also he was a party boy.
Yeah.
And I feel like you were a hard worker and a party boy as well.
Yeah, we
and he
partied a
told
bit.
some story, I think it was, I believe, where you guys were on some yacht and you guys went skinny dipping when he was like in the middle of like a contract thing and you were like, we're jumping in. Is this, did you, is
Well,
this?
we're on my boat,
You were
and
on
we
your boat,
left Monaco heading for Corsica, and I think that's about 60 nautical miles, so however long that took us, and however many drinks that took us. And then we arrived in the port, and it was the summer, and there was a lot of, you know, people around, fans of Formula One and what have you, and I decided we should give them a show. So I'm like getting my clothes off and saying, right, let's get out in the back of the boat. So it wasn't skinny dipping, it was in the harbour. I was going to like just get naked and, you know, and what have you. And Jensen's rugby tackling me to the floor in the salon of my boat to stop me, and he's saying to the crew, close the curtains, and I'm trying to get my pants off to get out there and show Corsica what, you know, jock cock looks like. But, anyway, I never managed, but there you go. It was all good fun.
Perfect. I mean, he talked a little bit about like kind of, you were from like almost at the end of an era where like that party boy was kind of like really the party culture was there, whereas I feel like when Button got in, it was like starting to be like the internet and it was like a kind of changing of the thing. How have you watched the kind of behind the scenes culture of Formula One change from your era to now? Yeah,
I think that there is no sort of private spaces anymore where going to a bar or a club was a private space.
Right.
The paparazzi would only operate outside those venues, not inside those venues. So that has all changed now. And even I see in Monaco, you know, I've been there for 30 years. And on my socials, I'll know if Fernando's been driving his Valkyrie or if George has been out, and because everyone's up there in Casino Square. And I get it, and it's part of the world we live in today. But that was kind of the one last safe place to just be, where no one was sort of posting you're at home,
right?
And you're driving around. Which look, it's boo-hoo for the multimillionaire racing drivers that somebody knows who they are and likes them and wants to take a video. So you just got to move with the times.
Sure. Okay, next we've got Lauda versus Jackie Stewart. This is another tough one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jackie because of. Although they were not so far apart in their eras, Jackie retired 73. I'm not sure what year was the first year for Lauda. Was it 74 or something? Or
he was around that time.
Yeah, right at the beginning.
I
think 76 he won the championship, didn't he? But
yes.
Or maybe
he was
earlier.
at BRM for like a year or two, and then he went to Ferrari.
Yeah, but I just think that Jackie of that era, 69, 71, 73 world champion, and all of the other things he did in terms of campaigning for safety. And he started a Grand Prix team and won a couple of races and then sold it to Ford. So I used to joke with his son Paul that instead of having a little green arrow in their homes pointing to Mecca, they had a little green arrow pointing to Detroit because Ford helped them set the team up.
Yeah.
And then they sold it to Ford, so it was like a double win.
Yeah.
So yeah, got to go with Jackie on that one.
Okay, great. These. Okay, moving down. We got Jim Clark versus Mika Hakkinen.
Well, it would be easy for me to go with Mika, given that we were teammates for 7 years, and up until recently, that was the longest relationship I'd ever had. But
hey, congratulations for beating the mark.
Yeah, but there's something about the stories of Jim and the fact that Jackie calls him out as one of the greatest drivers he ever competed against, which must carry some weight. So I feel a bit guilty to say Clark because I never actually saw him race, but he's still spoken about by more learned historians than I as someone that could jump in a touring car, could jump in an F2 car. Sadly, he died in an F2 car in Hockenheim, a rally car. So he seems, and saying that, Mika's done the Arctic Rally, so he's a bit of an all-rounder as well. Sure. But maybe it's a little Scottish pull, but I'm going to go with Jim.
Also, given the fact that Colin Chapman, Jim Clark to him was peak.
Yeah.
For the, the greatest
sort of
designer
Senna,
of the era to, recognize him. I'm curious, before we get off Mika, you were teammates with him at McLaren for so long. You're watching teammates at McLaren currently. I'm just, this is going to come out after the season's done, but I'm just kind of curious of your thoughts. McLaren has, the eras of McLaren having drivers going against each other, and kind of what are your just kind of quick impressions of this year, how they've handled it? Is there anything that, is there one thing that you would do differently? There's been so much discourse about it.
Yeah, I think it's credit to McLaren that they've had these inter-team battles over the decades, because they have an attitude of, let's get the two best drivers. At Ferrari, there was definitely, under the Schumacher era, and I know because I was offered a contract which said I would be number 2 to Schumacher. Now, aimed with everything we know now, I naturally would have been number 2 to Schumacher, but it was impossible for me to sign a contract that committed that. Eddie Irvine was happy to do that, Rubens and Massa, and they had a lot of success, and they were Ferrari drivers. But I think that McLaren in Prost, Senna, and all of the other big battles they've had between teammates is because they genuinely just want the best drivers and then try and manage them somehow. The only criticism I would have is that I don't like when the engineer, because that bond between the driver and the engineer for me has to be absolute. I'd liken it to if you guys are in the trenches together and someone blows the whistle back in the day to go out and fight the enemy. You've got to know that you're both going at the same time. Right. You're not hiding behind you, and you're not hiding behind, you're there shoulder to shoulder. So that relationship between driver and engineer has to be unbreakable, that bond. So I think that when they do give move over, don't race type instructions, that should come from the team principal or the sporting director. It should not come from the race engineer. The driver should absolutely believe that his engineer would say, that's not my job. My job is to get my driver winning, and I will only give instructions that can help that.
Right.
But I'm a professional, and therefore, if there's an instruction which is going to get my driver to hold position, that has to come from someone else in the team.
Right.
Did that happen with you when you were told to move over?
Yeah, it was Dave Ryan that told me rather than my engineer. Okay. Dave Ryan was the team manager. So I always believed in my engineers that they would do everything to get the advantage my way.
It's interesting. That's what felt so kind of uncomfortable to listen to, given last year when Lando, I think in Hungary, right, that he had to move over for him, and that he was emotionally blackmailing him. It felt like you're not this guy, Lando. You're a good guy. Remember, you're a good guy. And it was they have such an intimate relationship that has to happen. I think we all kind of felt that in our core. But that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
You might not have signed a number 2 contract at McLaren, but like you talked about later, that Dennis actually admitted that he favored, almost like a deathbed admission. I actually favored Häkkinen because of his injury, and I felt like a sort of emotional connection with him. So you might have gotten the same equipment, but there's a lot of talk about Oscar, Zach favors Lando deep down, and maybe can you speak about how it feels emotionally, maybe when you feel a tide turning against you? And do you see any of that happening at McLaren now, or do you think that that's BS? Or if you do see it, can you speak about how it feels to maybe be losing the team emotionally, or
I think
being a two driver, maybe not in equipment but in spirit? Yeah,
it's a tricky one, isn't it? And of course, the immediate response from anyone at McLaren would be, that's not the case.
Yeah,
and that's absolutely fine. I get that, and they may genuinely not just want to close the conversation down, but they may genuinely believe that.
Right.
But that said, it must. I only have one son. But if you've got 2 kids, you must kind of be slightly closer to one than the other. You've got to be because we're all different.
Yeah.
I'm the middle of 3, and my brother's very different to me, and my sister, who's no longer with us sadly, but she had a different personality as well. So I think that the fact that Lando he's doing his 150th Grand Prix with the team as we speak here in Vegas, so that he knows the team more, and if relationships didn't build over time and didn't matter, then we wouldn't have the word relationship. It is what it is. So I believe that they're giving equal opportunity in terms of machinery. I truly believe in McLaren, and I think they've all credit to Zach and Andrea Stella and all of the team and guys that I work with, like Rob Marshall and people that are there, and Peter Badromo, and they've built this winning culture again, and it's beautiful to observe. But Oscar's younger. I think Mark Webber in his corner has helped bridge some of those gaps, and he's picked up where he was lacking last year. He was lacking in qualifying.
Yeah.
He's picked that up. And up until Baku, he was looking like momentum. He was flawless, and momentum was with him. Since Baku, the wheels have come off the wagon, and it's like a champion boxer who's taken a punch, and he's still up, but he's struggling to sort of find, to get back into the round. So the last 3 Grand Prix, as we speak, are going to be vitally important. It feels now, with the gap in points, that unless there's reliability or crashes, it just feels that experience and inner peace and everything is just flowing with Lando. And it'd be very difficult to go, he doesn't deserve to win the championship. Up until Baku, it'd be very difficult to say that Oscar didn't deserve to win the championship.
Right.
But when we're analysing this after the year, if it is the case that Lando wins, and let's say he finishes in front of Oscar in the last 3 races, the question will be what happened in Baku. And that's the point at which, if Oscar loses the championship, that's the point at which he lost the championship.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the next matchup here. We've got Mario Andretti versus Ayrton Senna.
Well, it's got to be Ayrton, hasn't it? So Andretti, a great Formula One and IndyCar champion and just a legend of the sport. But I think even he would recognise Senna's brilliance.
Funny, we did this with Jacques Villeneuve, and Andretti won the whole thing.
Okay, interesting.
But he was shocked by it. He was like, I can't believe I just said that. But Andretti. But I think he saw maybe a bit of himself in Andretti in some way. But I think we're with you in that way.
Yeah.
Senna over Andretti. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Top right corner. They were teammates once. It all worked out beautifully. We were just talking about McLaren. We've got Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton.
We're another Ron Dennis special.
Yeah, well, you got to go Hamilton because he matched Alonso in his first year.
Yeah.
And Alonso was already a champion.
Yeah.
So the speed and future winningness of Hamilton was declared early doors. And Alonso at his peak and Hamilton, at his peak, then toe to toe, they were matched on lap times and things. But I think the what did you call it again? The height thing, the Napoleon complex has saw Fernando pull the pin on that grenade on a few occasions.
Better at managing his career.
Yeah,
Hamilton. Definitely. And not to mention, Hamilton coming in as a rookie, and Alonso having had the years and coming off of 2 championships.
Really impressive.
That was just what an unbelievable rookie season. Okay, next we've got Prost versus one of your write-ins, Graham Hill.
2 multiple champions. Graham Hill sort of became synonymous with Monte Carlo. He won it, I think, 5 times. Or he was nicknamed Mr. Monaco. Why I picked him in the before coming on the podcast was just, again, his sort of endurance in the sport. He built his own team. That didn't work out, sadly, and then ultimately, his death along with some of his employees on the aircraft. But I have to go with Prost as someone that I can relate more to. I was his test driver. He was then Mika and I's test driver at McLaren, bizarrely, for a year before he started his own team. And so therefore that's why Prost would win it. I never met Graham Hill.
The skinny bastard.
But when you watch footage of Graham, it was a wonderful era. It was that kind of Cary Grant era of the drivers were always, they wear suits and ties to fly.
Yeah.
It was a different, now they're all wearing whatever hoodies and God knows what else. But it was an elegant time, and with his moustache and his really sense of Britishness, if this was his style and substance discussion, he'd be right there.
He was like Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like getting technical feedback from Alan Prost?
Yeah, really cool, actually, because when I was his test driver, I remember being in the garage in Imola, it would have been 93, and I'm looking over and Alan's in the other Williams, and I'm going, this is as good as my life's ever going to get. The driver I admire, and I'm sharing what the car's doing, and he's talking to me just peer to peer rather than rookie to his multiple championships. He would go out, do one time lap, come in, get out of the car, drink an espresso, talk for half an hour, get back in the car, go out, do one time lap. He did very few laps because I think he recognized the risk in testing. We used to do most of our crashing in testing because I think you'd fail in testing. So he was, he was just very calculating in that respect, but great professional. And when he came to McLaren in '96, as a sort of advisor, test driver. He's also a little conniving because he knew, I guess, that he had the chance to start Prost Grand Prix, and what he was doing was getting a ringside seat inside McLaren for a year, discovering what it took to run a team, and then he started his own team. So I suspect Ron Dennis was a bit pissed off with him because he wouldn't have known that.
Was right.
Yeah. Lots of things for Ron Dennis to not like Prost about. Okay, we done. Hamilton moves on. So does Prost. Okay, final part of the second round. We've got Sebastian Vettel versus Juan Manuel Fangio.
God, again, impossible to kind of
completely different eras.
Completely different eras, but if what I understand, was he a 4-time or a 5-time world champion, Fangio?
I think he won five world
championships,
but he won them on four different teams.
Yeah, different teams. Yeah. Ferrari, Maserati.
He wasn't team dependent
Mercedes.
Like Vettel. He just wherever he won, it went. He was the X factor.
Yeah, and I think that given the era he raced and that he survived it.
Yeah.
And what he achieved, you've got to go with Fangio. Even Vettel's got to go with Fangio, I would have thought. So, yeah, there you go, Fangio.
But I want to speak to, because a lot of people talk about number of championships, but I want to talk about like winning in different eras, winning on different teams. Like, how do you value that?
I think the era that he raced, it was the non-aerodynamic era.
Right,
it was pure horsepower and a bit of vehicle dynamics, mechanical grip. And therefore, although he was different teams, the cars were if you look at the first cars that I guess even Jackie Stewart was driving, they had no downforce as such. They were just big Formula Ford 1600s, but with a bit more power. A modern GB4 would be a Formula 4 car would be quicker than probably a Formula 1 car was in its era. So it's a very we sort of supercharged the performance of Formula 1 in the 70s when aerodynamics came along.
Right. Okay, moving on to Jack Brabham versus Max Verstappen.
Max.
Okay, done. Fangio moves on. So does Verstappen. We are in the Elite Eight here. We've got Schumacher, Stewart, Clark, Senna, Hamilton, Prost, Fangio, and Verstappen going up to the top left into our final four, Schumacher or Jackie Stewart.
You got to go Schumacher because he defined an era, 7-time world champion. Still an element of danger in the sport around his career, as we know, but he was, I think, the next generation of modern professional. Jackie professionalized the sport in the 60s and 70s, but I think Schumacher came with a Germanic, athletic, metronome kind of approach to working with his team and the need he had to win, probably based on his background as well, a relatively humble background, and his absolute inability to ever accept any blame made him a bit of a machine. And I think that if you put best of Stewart against best of Schumacher, it just feels that Schumacher would, put sugar in his fuel tank or do whatever is necessary to beat him. So we'll go with Schumacher.
Can you speak a little bit about the Stewart having changed the game? It changed Formula One in the safety with regards to safety. Can you just speak a little bit about like his impact?
Yeah, there is no question that Jackie had the self-confidence of that era to speak out about he was burying friends, he was going to funerals, and yes, they were gladiatorial racers, they understood the dangers that were involved in the sport, but he recognized it was unacceptable, some of the risks that were being taken, and that took balls that clearly would be out of proportion to his height. I think that's the thing that really Jackie wasn't just arrive and drive. He was, Grand Prix Drivers Association. He professionalized that era.
Right. Okay, moving on to Clark versus Senna.
You got to go Senna because, again, armed with the knowledge and information of the speed of the cars, Clark was still of that era where jumping in a touring car and jumping in a Formula 1 car probably weren't vastly different because the Formula 1 car, although lighter and quicker, didn't have downforce, the ones that he raced.
Right.
so he probably
he was like in the very beginning of the downforce, when they were first figuring it out with Chapman.
So when we think of Grand Prix cars now, we think of low-flying aircraft, and Senna was in that era of ground effect and super fast cars.
Right. Okay, moving on to our next one, Hamilton versus Prost.
Hamilton, on the basis of he came in and made a big impact in his first ever year alongside Alonso, didn't potentially win some of his races because of a weight advantage, which I think Prost probably did. And fairly uncontroversial career Hamilton's had. I can only really think of, there was a kind of lie gate in Malaysia one year where he was maybe economical with the what actually happened out on track, and Dave Ryan, the team manager, actually left the team taking the kind of bullet for that. But I'll put that down to youthful, let's say, encouragement based probably from Ron, and the coming together with Max at Silverstone was him, I think, going, that's it, I've had enough, I'm not lifting.
Right.
And because the angle and the nature of that corner, there was only ever going to be one outcome, which was contact.
Right.
But other than that, he's been incredibly clean in his career. He's obviously off track, changed so many things and perceptions, and you've got to admire that and have full respect for his achievements.
Okay, and next, Fangio versus Verstappen.
Well, you got to go with Verstappen because he's moved the sport on. Schumacher and Hamilton had established what being a Grand Prix driver is, and Verstappen's moved that again further. And so to me, Verstappen's got a combination of, Schumacher's tenacity, Hamilton's speed, Senna's absolute belief in himself. Senna in that fantastic crash with Alain Prost in Suzuka, where he said, if I don't come out of the corner first, then neither of us will come out of the corner. He declared it. He did it.
Yeah.
And then in those days, it was just like a racing incident.
Right.
Yeah.
Now a driver, I'm pretty sure, would go to jail. His family would be, sent off to Siberia.
Well, we saw Verstappen.
Still would be if George Russell was in charge.
That's right. Okay, Verstappen moves on. So does Hamilton. So does Senna.
It's not really surprising, is it? The names that we're ending up with. So
no, I think this.
Well, I thought I'd get a little more Scottish bias. Maybe Clark would sneak in there.
Yeah, the Stewart.
I was hoping for something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna start. These are we saw some of these guys. These battles happen on track. Not as much, obviously, on this first category as we would have all loved to. But Schumacher, Senna.
Oh, is that who we're picking between?
Yes.
Like this in terms of the championships and the machine, you would go with Schumacher. But I do believe, and as much as, again, I totally respect, all of these guys are way beyond my capabilities, I think it feels that Senna went up against teammates that he didn't care who the teammate was, where it's my belief, based on what I was offered, that there was a lot of support system around Schumacher as the number one. That does not take anything away from him as a driver, and actually just shows that, well, if you can negotiate it, why wouldn't you? But if I look at what drove me to want to be in Formula One, it was I wanted to race at the highest level against the best drivers that had made it or were available at that time, and find out where I ranked. So it wasn't just I want to win. Of course you want to win, but the whole reason of competition is to go, you and I go head, toe to toe on the racetrack. One of us will do a better job on that day, and then it's like, oh, okay, well done, you did a better job, or I would expect you to say, well done, if I beat you. That's what competition in sport is. It's racing respect. So with all of that little monologue, I have to go with Senna.
Love it. Okay, Senna's in the finals. Who's going to be going against him? It's Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. We saw this play out in 2021. Lots of people think lots of different things about whose championship that rightfully belongs to. In terms of their careers, who are you choosing?
I'm going to go with Max, and this won't surprise some people who know me and like me. and know me and dislike me. For the following reasons, I think that every generation should be better. That's what evolution is. I think that there's a crossover of generations there, and Hamilton has been incredible. But there's also, there's also a little bit of a disconnect in some ways, where, and maybe this is a personal, well, of course, this whole thing is a personal opinion. Max, I find very grounded. Very, if he's here, it's just Max. He's present, and we know when he's doing his interviews and press conferences, if he's not happy, he says it, and he's not shy to say that, and he sort of owns his beliefs. Whether he's happy, whether he's sad. So I go with Verstappen because they're very difficult to separate the two of them in terms of Hamilton at his peak, and I keep saying that because I'm not sure that he is at his peak anymore. Right. Controversial for a loser like me to dare to say that, but it just feels the greats match their teammates or beat their teammates. And in the last couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't do that with George, and it doesn't feel like he's done that with Charles. Right. So if we put opinions to one side and we just use, what are the two things that are ultimately important in Formula One? It's a stopwatch and it's a checkered flag. Everything else is opinion. So stopwatch gives you your qualifying position, as we know. Checkered flag gives you the number one trophy. And I think the outright speed is maybe not there with Lewis anymore, but he's still, you've got to give him so much respect. But Max, it still feels like he's developing. It still feels there's more to come. It still feels that, how far can this guy go?
It's interesting you're talking about the eras and like each generation should be better than the next. Max was recently on that podcast talking about sim versus karting, and that he's such a big proponent of the sim, and that kind of you're watching all these young guys who like have been on these. The tech is getting better and better and better. Do you think that like is an aspect of? I think Max really sees that as being like, this is what gives me that edge. And whereas like Lewis kind of came from a generation where like his sim, was like Nintendo 64 or whatever, you know what I mean? So where do you kind of like view that? That was very kind of illuminating.
Are you jealous of the drivers that have the, did you wish you had a sim like a video games when you were a kid?
Well, not really, because we didn't have mobile phones when I was a kid. Right. We didn't have internet when I was a kid. So I am of that generation that sent letters. I am of that generation.
But just to make you a better driver.
There's no question it would have enhanced my experience and my knowledge, but I think you can't ever really regret what you never had. It didn't exist in my time. I didn't choose to be born. Yeah. That decision was made, by my parents. Not, you didn't choose to be born. So we're born into the eras we're born, and it's our duty, I believe, as human beings, to try to survive and try to do the best we can, armed with the information and armed with the tools we have. So I think that the benefit for Max is he's the son of a former Grand Prix driver who had arrived, Jos I raced against. He arrived in Formula One at 19, wonderfully fast, but I think physically maybe wasn't as well prepared, and he was up against Schumacher in the Benetton, and it kind of didn't manifest itself in the same way as it might have done given his talent. And I think he made it his mission with Max to right the wrongs of his own career, and he absolutely has. So credit to Jos, credit to Sophie, Max's mother, who's as an ex-racer.
Also a karting
and they've created this incredible athlete, this incredible racing driver with so much speed.
Okay. In our finals, we got just a couple chill guys. Just two guys that are just chill on track, chill off track. We got Ayrton Senna, Max Verstappen. This is for all the marbles. Who's your GOAT?
Senna. And the reason I say that is because, if I'm not mistaken, I've even heard Max acknowledge his admiration for what Ayrton achieved in that era. And his single-minded approach. If he believed in something, he was not swayed from that. And Senna was not without controversy, as was Schumacher. And in fact, as with Max. So of the four there, Schumacher, Hamilton, Senna, Verstappen, arguably Lewis is the least controversial on track, which should be acknowledged, of course. But having worked with Senna, having experience being in a room with people and the room falling silent because Ayrton's come in from a back door and is standing there, and slowly but surely you felt his presence. There was something, in my opinion, and I'm not a spiritual person, he was, but that's the only time I think in my life where you felt the presence of someone before you saw them. And therefore, based on my personal experience there, Max is way too grounded. He's a great, of course, and will continue to do amazing things. But Ayrton Senna.
So would you say Senna was the most intimidating guy you were around, even more so than Michael?
Well, I never raced Ayrton, of course, but I tested with him. Yeah. And not intimidating in the, oh shit, I need to what, he just accepted me as the test driver and very, very good that way. But he had a presence. He had a belief.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe how you can feel someone being in the room, but I experienced that, and it kind of puts me in a slightly uncomfortable place because, as I say, I'm kind of a meat and two veg kind of guy. What I see is what I can believe in, and there's a lot of things.
But there was an aura.
That's what the kids would call it aura.
Well, there you go.
Aura. Yeah. Can you speak just a little bit? I think it's a kind of beautiful thing, that he's your winner here, as you had the daunting task of replacing him after his death. Can you talk
Impossible.
Can you just talk about kind of like, obviously you had such reverence for him, you talk about him in this way that I think a lot of people see him, but you had that front row seat. Can you just speak a little bit about kind of what that experience was like, and kind of where did that deepen your appreciation for him, having to fill those shoes? Like when you step in your dad's shoes and you're like, damn, he's really big. You know what I mean? Like, was it that kind of vibe, or what was that experience like?
Well, I know subsequently through Julian Jacoby, who was at IMG when I first was managed by IMG and then became Ayrton's contractual manager, that Ayrton, having done a Estoril, a couple of test days with me, and he was kind of listening and watching and trying to figure out whether he liked what I was doing. Right. I know that he'd spoken with Julian and he'd spoken with Frank, saying that he thought I deserved a chance in Formula One, and therefore that certainly played a part in Frank taking the risk, I guess, and promoting a inexperienced rookie rather than going with a number of drivers who'd been in Grand Prix that could have facilitated ending the season. So the reason I'm sitting here is not just because of Ayrton's passing, but it's because of his words before he passed. Because if, to come back to the opening of your podcast, if he thought I was a wanker, then I would never have seen the light of a Grand Prix track as a race driver. So yeah, working with him, just very aware of everybody and what their roles were, and wanted to know what everyone was doing and why they were there, so he could figure out whether they were on the team. Because it's still the thing, to get a team has everybody's back, and there is no politics publicly in a team. When the great teams are winning, they're tight and information doesn't get out. When teams aren't winning and the finger pointing starts and the politics starts, that's when you expose the breakdown in that team. And so he understood about how bringing the team together, and there's no accident that he was successful across the teams that he raced for. And Ayrton Senna, is he not one of, it's a bit like Ferrari is the most recognizable badge in automotive. Is Ayrton Senna not one of the most recognizable names, more than even Hamilton? Right. Who's obviously gone on to win many more championships of Verstappen. The fact that we still celebrate him today just tells, beyond my words, tells us how special he was. And I consider it one of the great privileges of my life that I was able to work with the drivers like Senna and Prost and, Mansell for different reasons. But, Senna just he had an elegance, he had a class, he had a look. I wouldn't normally recognize the handsomeness of other men, but he had a handsomeness which would be very difficult not to find attractive.
That's right.
I keep thinking though in the back of my head, I'm like, what if Max actually somehow pulled this off? What is it? Do we have to call you back and you actually never mind? Forget all that stuff.
Pulled off this championship. Yeah. We have to run this whole thing back.
If Max could, it's unlikely, but if he does, then what it does is make a mockery of the Apple movie script because why do we need a script? And if that came off, it would be like.
That's right. Well, we have our winner.
Do you think there's going to be many people writing in complaining?
Always, no matter what.
Never not a complaint in the comments section. But I think your words were very beautiful. We appreciate you.
I mean, Villeneuve put Andretti in, and the whole world didn't explode. But
yeah, I think you're safe here.
You're safe.
And no, your words about Senna especially, I think were extremely powerful. And hey, if you in the beginning you said everyone calls me wanker. If Ayrton Senna didn't think you were a wanker, then I don't think anyone has the right to call you a wanker. But we thank you so much for being on We're Wankers. We're Vankas podcast. Can you honor us with we start with What's Up Vankas? Could you honor our people with a goodbye Vankas?
Goodbye Vankas.
Yes, goodbye Vankas. David Coulthard, legend. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I'm a boss. I'm a red flag heavy hitter.